Hey guys, it's Willie Sandry. The project of the day is to bling out your 12/16 Midi lathe. We're going to add a 20-inch bed extension, a 10-inch outfeed bed extension with banjo extension and chuck adapter, and a beautiful leg set as well as a mobility kit. So stick around, we'll get into those. Okay, so first thing we need to do to get the mobility kit on for this lathe stand on the 12/16 is to add this support bracket, and that goes on from the inside. Conveniently, there's a threaded insert in the bottom that goes through here, and that kind of holds it in place so that the four holes are in the right position. That's one thing that is not really stated in the manual, but if you get that started first, it makes the rest of the wheel mounting assembly quite a bit easier. Comes the wheel assembly, and if you mount this on the right side of the lathe stand as you're facing the lathe, it makes the pedal towards you, which is a little easier to access. If shop layout dictates the other way, you could put the foot pedal on the left, but the pedal would be facing backwards is the only change there. So either one would work fine. We're going to go ahead and mount the pedal assembly with the caster wheel on the right side of the lathe stand. So just 4 5mm cap screw bolts will attach this assembly to the stand. We'll get that installed and on to mounting the caster. A little bit of removable Loctite goes a long way to prevent your bolts from loosening up in regular use. So next comes the spring on the caster post, and finally the caster is threaded in place and tightened with a wrench. So the foot pedal has a nice easy plunging action for easy mobility, getting your tool moved around the shop. Okay, good. So now let's start looking at the stationary side of the caster wheels. And the factory setup has a little bolt that goes through a nut that's welded to this assembly. And then it's got a little finger knob, and this allows you to kind of just put the bolt against the floor as kind of a brake. Well, the interesting thing is we wind up with 2 of these feet that aren't used. You don't use the rubber feet on the stationary caster side of the stand, and so I'm going to use one of these feet to make a little softer brake against the concrete floor. To do that, all you have to do is just add a washer and a nut with a little bit of Loctite, and then that'll function very similar to the factory setup, just a little softer landing there. So we'll go ahead and snug that up and get that installed. Okay, so on the left side of the stand, there's 2 mounting holes that are already threaded. You don't have to worry about getting nuts on the back of them, and that's where we'll mount the stationary wheel bar. Okay, so this whole wheel bar assembly is just how it comes from your box. It's shipped and delivered this way. The only thing we've added is one of the feet that also comes with the kit, just for a little softer landing on the brake on this side of the stand. But that's optional, and otherwise we're just going to finish installing this with the 5mm cap screw that comes in the hardware packet. The only thing I wanted to mention about the assembly of the stand itself is one thing that might trip you up. There are 2 sets of holes for this cross shelf and tool holder. And at first glance it may seem like these are 2 different heights that you can mount the shelf at, and that's not the case. This is an angled shelf. You only use 1 pair of holes on either side of the stand, front and back. You won't use these top ones unless you elected to install the shelf backwards, tilting the other way. This is kind of the standard installation so that the tool holder cants forward. Your handles for your lathe tools will be more accessible, and the sharp ends will be pointed away from the user. So don't let that trip you up when you're assembling your lathe stand. It's just an angled shelf, and you'll only use 1 pair of holes on each side, front and back. Okay? The lifting action on this is actually amazingly effortless. Just a quick push of the foot and you're up for easy mobility. Pop the lever down, and you are solidly on rubber feet. This thing's not going to go anywhere in use. So really smart system and really solidly built. Okay, so we'll start 3 of these 6mm Allen head bolts, and then we'll be able to mount the 10-inch side extension table. Just get them loosely started, and then the extension table actually slips over and drops down on the bolts, and we'll go ahead and tighten them up from underneath. And then we can just replace this cap and add the chuck adapter that threads onto short threads and is secured with these set screws that you tighten with an Allen wrench. Okay, so just bring your banjo around and you can lock that in place. And then comes the banjo extension. You can position that as needed for your outboard turning operation. Lock that in place. And then comes the factory tool rest that came with your lathe. Slide that in as needed and lock it in place. Initially you'll have to just spin that handle around again, but it is easily positionable because it's a ratcheting style lever. And you can position the tool rest wherever you needed for the outboard turning, and you're all set. That's all it is to installing the 10-inch outboard extension and the banjo extension with chuck adapter. There's just a little bit of light machine oil on there for shipping purposes, and look at how easily that comes off with a little bit of WD-40. You won't spend much time wiping these down. It really comes off nice. This is usually the point when I notice how nicely these beds are machined on the lathes and the bed extensions for the lathes. They just really do a nice job of these right out of the factory. So it's the same setup here. You just need those 3 screws and start them. Don't thread them in too deep, and we'll be able to drop that 20-inch bed extension right in place. It's really a slick system because you don't have to hold the weight of the bed extension as you tighten these home. We'll get that threaded in and install the extension. Okay, to add the 20-inch extension, just drop it over the bolts, and we'll get a straight edge out to align things as we tighten the bolts home. So what I like to do is use a long straight edge to confirm that we're nice and flush here at the transition. And once we get everything nicely aligned, we'll go ahead and snug down those bolts. Perfect. One thing that really impressed me is you can add this 20-inch bed extension without the need for a different leg set or additional support under the bed. It's a really great setup on the 1216. So the real test of how well you've done aligning the beds is to loosen up the banjo and slide it down. Make sure you don't hang up on anything. If not, you're all good to go, and you've really improved the capacity of your Midi lathe. So just replace the tailstock and you're ready to get to work. Let's check the alignment of the tailstock before we get started. Perfection. I really like the handles on this 1216 lathe. They're foam padded and they have a really positive locking action. Okay guys, there you go. Just about every accessory you could want for the 1216 Midi lathe. We've got a very substantial leg set as well as a nice mobility kit. And for people that are looking to do spindle work or longer turnings, this 20-inch bed extension is really worth a look. If you're into large bowl turnings, consider this 10-inch outboard extension with all the accessories it comes with. LagunaTools.com is where you can find more information. Thanks for watching.